Most men desire change, but almost none achieve it. Why? Because they cling to comfort, illusions, and weakness. In this video, I will expose the brutal truth: transformation is not born from hope, but from necessity, power, and the courage to abandon who you once were. You arrive here not by accident, but because some part of you is restless, dissatisfied with the prison you've built around yourself. Change is not gentle, it is violent. It tears apart old habits, destroys fragile identities, and leaves you standing naked before your own limitations. If you are ready to change, you must be ready to kill the version of yourself that has failed you. This is not philosophy for the dreamer. It is strategy for the ambitious, for those who would seize control over themselves before seeking control over others. Change begins not with inspiration, but with destruction. And the first thing that must die is comfort. You may think comfort is harmless. A soft bed, predictable routines, a life shielded from risk. But in truth, comfort is the enemy of transformation. It lulls you, seduces you, and convinces you that mediocrity is acceptable. Ask yourself, how many of your ambitions have died quietly, not because you lacked ability, but because you preferred comfort over conquest? History remembers no man who clung to ease. Caesar did not march across the Rubicon to protect his safety. He did it to seize power, knowing that retreat into comfort would mean eternal obscurity. Alexander did not weep because he lacked kingdoms to conquer. He wept because comfort had robbed him of worthy battles. When men surrender to ease, their legacy evaporates. But comfort is clever. It whispers in your ear, "Stay where you are. You've done enough. Rest. You deserve it." It disguises itself as kindness, when in truth it is the most insidious form of weakness. The fortress you think is protecting you is, in fact, your prison. Consider this. How many times have you delayed action until tomorrow? Tomorrow becomes next week, then next year. In psychology, this is called the present bias, the tendency to value immediate pleasure over long-term reward. The mind lies to you, telling you that comfort now will not matter later. But later never comes. Comfort ensures that. I ask you, do you think a ruler maintains power by indulging comfort? No. A ruler remains vigilant, paranoid, aware that the moment he relaxes, another waits to strike. The same is true for you. The moment you grow soft, the world moves past you. Someone hungrier, someone sharper, someone less enslaved by comfort takes your place. Look closely at your daily life. The bed you do not want to leave. The food you eat to feel good, rather than to strengthen. The conversations that waste your time, yet give you the illusion of connection. These are not small indulgences. They are assassins in disguise, stealing your potential piece by piece. Do you remember the Spartans? They trained not on padded floors, but on rough earth. They taught their youth through hunger, through hardship, through exposure to pain. Why? Because they understood a truth most men cannot bear, that greatness is only forged in suffering. Comfort produces nothing but weakness. Even in modern times, you see the same principle. The entrepreneur who wakes at dawn while others sleep. The athlete who breaks his own body daily to reach higher limits. The strategist who sacrifices pleasure to sharpen his mind. These men live in discomfort by choice, and because of this, they command more of life than those who seek comfort at every turn. But let me turn the knife deeper. Comfort is not just a physical state. It is also psychological. You are comfortable with your identity, with the excuses you tell yourself, with the narrative that explains your failures. You think it is you, but it is not. It is simply comfort wearing a mask. It tells you that you cannot change, that this is who you are. Do you believe that lie? If you do, then you will never change. Because to change, you must murder comfort. You must step willingly into pain, into the unknown, into the humiliation of being unskilled and uncertain. Most people refuse this. They crave applause before mastery, security before risk, reward before sacrifice. And so they remain forever weak. Imagine your life as a kingdom. Comfort is the corrupt advisor, whispering poison into your ear, convincing you not to fight, not to risk, not to advance. While you hesitate, enemies gather outside your gates. Your own strength decays within the walls. And when the invasion comes, you are unprepared. Is that the fate you accept? Do not misunderstand me. Comfort has its use. A ruler may occasionally rest, just as a soldier may sheath his sword. But rest must serve power, not replace it. Comfort must be earned through conquest, not granted as a default. Otherwise, it consumes you. So I leave you with this question: what comforts rule your life today? And are you strong enough to kill them before they kill you? Because this is only the first step. The death of comfort clears the path, but what comes next is more dangerous. Not the destruction of ease, but the destruction of you. Identity is the most dangerous prison of all, not the walls you see around you, but the invisible chains you place upon yourself. You think you know who you are. You tell yourself, I am this kind of person. I act this way. I do not cross these lines. But these declarations, these fragile certainties, are the very reason you remain stagnant. They comfort you, yes, but they also bind you. Consider this: what you call identity is nothing more than a collection of habits, beliefs, and repeated stories. Most of them were not even chosen by you. They were given to you. By family, by society, by teachers, by the culture that raised you. You defend them fiercely, not because they are true, but because without them, you would feel naked, uncertain, exposed. And yet, if you wish to transform, this false sense of self must die. History offers endless examples. Think of Octavian, the young man who later became Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. At the beginning, he was seen as weak, inexperienced, overshadowed by the great Julius Caesar, but he did not cling to that identity. He abandoned it. He reforged himself as the cold, calculating ruler who outmaneuvered Mark Antony and every rival. Had he insisted, I am just Caesar's heir, nothing more, history would have forgotten him. By discarding one identity, he seized another, and with it, an empire. Contrast him with those who never shed their skin. Kings who believed their bloodline made them immortal, generals who believed past victories guaranteed future ones. They clung to their old identities, and because of it, they were destroyed. Identity is a graveyard of men who mistook yesterday for eternity. But let us turn the blade toward you. How many times have you told yourself, I am not disciplined. I am not confident. I am not the kind of person who takes risks. You repeat these mantras like prayers. And like prayers, they bind you to faith in a false god, your old self. What you defend as who you are is nothing more than a script you repeat until it becomes truth. In psychology, there is a term, self-concept. It is the mental image you hold of yourself. Powerful, yes, but also restrictive. For once the mind believes something about its identity, it filters every action to remain consistent with it. If you believe you are lazy, you sabotage effort to prove yourself right. If you believe you are powerless, you avoid opportunities where power could be seized. Identity does not simply describe you, it commands you. And this is why it must be destroyed. You must be willing to betray who you think you are. You must be willing to appear hypocritical, inconsistent, even false in the eyes of others. For what is consistency but a chain? The lion who insists on always being merciful soon starves. The fox who insists on always being cunning eventually overplays his trickery. The ruler who insists on always being just is dethroned by the unjust. Inflexibility kills. The same is true for you. You think authenticity is a virtue. It is not. It is a shackle. Men who worship authenticity never evolve, for they would rather remain loyal to their past selves than betray them in pursuit of power. Do you see the irony? They become slaves to yesterday, wearing their own corpse like a crown. Instead, learn the art of masks. Adopt identities as weapons. Be the silent observer when it benefits you. Be the loud commander when authority is needed. Be the humble student to gather knowledge. Be the ruthless predator to seize what others will not. The strongest men in history were shapeshifters. They understood that identity is not fixed. It is chosen, discarded, and chosen again. Even in your own life, manipulation proves this. Have you never acted stronger than you felt, simply to gain respect? Have you never hidden weakness behind a smile, simply to avoid pity? These were masks. And in those moments, you were free from the tyranny of your true self. You wielded identity as a tool, instead of worshipping it as a master. So the question is not, who are you? But rather, who must you become to achieve what you desire? If you cling to the answer of yesterday, you remain trapped. If you dare to abandon it, to shed the skin, you gain freedom. Painful, yes. Uncertain, yes. But necessary. Remember this: a man who kills his identity once is reborn. A man who kills it many times becomes untouchable, unpredictable, unstoppable. But what happens after you discard identity? What fills the void? That is where necessity enters. And necessity is the force that bends even the most stubborn man to change. Desire is weak. Necessity is unbreakable. Most men live by desire. They say, I want to be stronger. I want to be wealthier. I want to change. Yet their lives remain the same year after year. Why? Because desire has no teeth. It is soft, optional, fleeting. A man can want endlessly and never move an inch. But necessity is a tyrant. It does not ask. It commands. It strips away choice. It says, do this or you perish. Act or be destroyed. Move or be forgotten. And under this ruthless pressure, men discover what they are truly capable of. Think of Hannibal crossing the Alps with his army. Desire did not drive him. No man desires to march through snow and ice with starving soldiers and dying elephants. But necessity demanded it. To strike Rome, he had no other path. And so he accomplished what seemed impossible. Or consider the city of Florence during siege. The citizens did not suddenly become brave because they desired courage. They fought with desperation because necessity left no alternative. Behind them was starvation, in front of them the enemy. Desire had no role in their survival. Only necessity forged their resistance. And you? Look at your own life. How many times have you promised yourself you would change when it was only a desire? You wanted to wake earlier, to build discipline, to break free from weakness. But the bed was warm. The food was tempting. The excuse was easier. Desire collapsed at the first resistance. Now recall a moment when necessity struck. Perhaps you faced losing everything. Perhaps you had no money, no support, no escape. Suddenly, the same tasks that felt impossible became natural. You worked harder than ever. You endured more pain than you thought possible. Because in that moment, there was no other option. This is the paradox: men rarely change because they want to. They change because they must. Pain, crisis, danger. These are sharper teachers than desire. The mind may resist ambition, but it obeys necessity without question. Psychology confirms this truth. Studies show that fear of loss is twice as powerful as the hope of gain. A man will work harder to avoid losing 10 coins than to earn 20. Desire inspires dreams. Necessity ignites survival. If you rely on desire, you remain a dreamer. If you harness necessity, you become unstoppable. So how do you use this? You manufacture necessity. You create conditions where failure is not an option. You corner yourself deliberately, until the only escape is through discipline and action. Burn the boats, as Hernan Cortés once did when arriving in the New World. With no way back, his men fought with the fury of survival. He removed choice, and in doing so, guaranteed victory. Do you think his men desired to win? No, they were forced to win. Ask yourself, where in your life are you still leaving the boats intact? Where do you allow comfort, excuses, and escape routes to protect you from necessity? You say you want change, but you build safety nets everywhere. And those nets are the reason you never transform. Perhaps you tell yourself, if this fails, I will try again later. That is desire speaking. Necessity removes later. It says now or never. And that is when real change is born. Look at your idols. The leaders, the conquerors, the masters of discipline. Do you imagine they reached greatness by desire alone? No. They lived under relentless necessity. They were hunted by enemies, by rivals, by fate itself. And under this pressure, they became harder, sharper, more dangerous. You, too, must welcome necessity. You must set stakes so high that failure crushes you. Only then will you rise beyond the limits you thought unbreakable. Do not be fooled by your desires. They make you feel alive, but they betray you. They comfort you with possibility, while necessity forces you into reality. The truth is simple: no man changes because he wants to. He changes because he must. So ask yourself now, what must happen before you stop merely wanting and begin obeying necessity? Will you wait for crisis, for loss, for catastrophe to force your hand? Or will you create necessity before it destroys you? Because after necessity comes the test of mastery. To command yourself fully, to rule not just in crisis, but in every moment. And mastery of the self. That is where true power begins. A man who cannot command himself is unfit to command anyone else. This is the law of power, and it is merciless. You dream of influence. You desire control over others. But if you remain a slave to your impulses, your emotions, your appetites, then you are nothing more than a puppet waiting for the strings to be pulled. Think of the generals who lost empires because they could not master themselves. Darius of Persia had one of the greatest armies the world had ever seen, yet he fled before Alexander. Not because he lacked soldiers, but because he lacked control over fear. His men saw his weakness and collapsed with him. Self-mastery abandoned him, and so did his empire. Now think of Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who ruled Rome not by spectacle or cruelty alone, but by his mastery over himself. He resisted indulgence, resisted distraction, resisted the temptation to abuse power for trivial pleasures. His discipline preserved his rule in a time of chaos. One ruler fell because he could not master his fear. Another endured because he mastered everything within his own mind. The lesson is clear: before you rule others, you must conquer the empire of the self. Look inward. What rules you now? Is it anger? Is it lust? Is it laziness? Is it fear? Each of these is a tyrant. And if you cannot dethrone them, you will always kneel before them. You may wear the crown, but you are no king. Consider how easily others manipulate you when you lack self-mastery. If you hunger for validation, a simple compliment enslaves you. If you cannot resist desire, then temptation becomes a leash. If you cannot control anger, an enemy only needs to provoke you to watch you destroy yourself. Do you see the danger? Without self-mastery, you are vulnerable to every strategist, every manipulator, every rival who understands your weakness. Psychology explains this with brutal precision. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-control, decides whether you act with discipline or with impulse. When you train it, when you strengthen it through restraint and deliberate choice, you become harder to sway. But when you indulge every appetite, you weaken this power. You erode your defenses. You leave yourself open to exploitation. Tell me, what good is ambition if your own emotions betray you? What use is strategy if you collapse at the first taste of discomfort? What value is intelligence if pleasure distracts you before it can be applied? Without mastery of the self, all else crumbles. The Stoics understood this. They practiced voluntary discomfort, not out of masochism, but to prove to themselves that nothing external could rule them. They fasted, they slept on the ground, they denied themselves pleasure, not because pleasure is evil, but because mastery over pleasure is power. To enjoy without dependence, that is freedom. But most men cannot resist their chains. They gorge themselves with distraction, surrender to indulgence, and call it living. They mistake slavery for freedom because they cannot imagine life without their masters. And so, when challenge arrives, they collapse. They are already conquered long before the battle begins. You must not be like them. You must treat yourself as both ruler and subject. You must command your mind with the same authority a general commands his army. No soldier respects a commander who indulges every weakness. No mind will obey a master who cannot enforce discipline. You must issue orders to yourself, and you must obey them without negotiation. Wake when you say you will wake. Train when you say you will train. Work when you say you will work. In these small victories, you build the fortress of self-mastery. And once the fortress is built, no enemy can breach it. But understand this, self-mastery is not a final victory. It is a war without end. Every day new temptations arrive at your gates. Every day, new fears seek to breach your walls. And every day, you must defend the throne against the rebels of weakness within yourself. If you fail even once, the enemy grows stronger. If you fail often, you are dethroned entirely. So ask yourself now, are you ruling your impulses, or are they ruling you? And if you are ruled, how long before someone else discovers your master's name? Because those who master themselves gain an empire within. And with this empire, they can begin to master the world without. But self-mastery, though powerful, is not enough. For even the most disciplined man must eventually confront the ruthlessness of reinvention. The cutting away of people, places, and attachments that anchor him to weakness. And that, my friend, is the next battlefield. Reinvention is not gentle. It is not polite. It is ruthless. Most men fail to change not because they lack ambition, but because they refuse to sever the chains that bind them to their old lives. They cling to people who reinforce weakness. They cling to environments that poison growth. They cling to attachments that drain strength while disguising themselves as love, loyalty, or comfort. But to reinvent yourself, you must cut without hesitation. You must be willing to abandon what no longer serves you, even if it screams to be kept. History teaches this lesson mercilessly. Consider Julius Caesar. When he crossed the Rubicon, he did more than defy the Senate. He severed ties with the very system that had raised him. He knew there could be no return. Reinvention required betrayal of the old order. And only through this betrayal did he ascend to power. Or look at the Medici of Florence. Their dominance did not come from preserving the traditions of the city, but from reshaping them. They discarded allies when they became liabilities. They elevated new ones when advantage demanded it. Ruthlessness, not sentiment, secured their dynasty. Now look at yourself. Who in your life reinforces your weakness? Who encourages your excuses? Who reminds you, subtly or directly, of the identity you are trying to kill? These people are anchors. They may smile at you. They may love you. They may claim to want the best for you. But if they keep you chained to your old self, they are enemies to your reinvention, and you must be ruthless enough to remove them. Psychology confirms this truth. Behavior is not created in isolation. It is shaped by environment and reinforced by those around you. If you surround yourself with the lazy, you will become lazy. If you surround yourself with the ambitious, you will rise to match them. The principle is simple. Identity is contagious. And if you wish to transform, you must choose the contagion carefully. But here lies the cruelty of reinvention. It demands betrayal. You must betray your old alliances. You must betray the weaker version of yourself. You must betray the expectations others hold of you. To cling to them is to remain bound. To abandon them is to invite hatred, misunderstanding, and even loneliness. Yet that loneliness is the crucible where the new self is forged. Do you think Alexander the Great wept for the companions he left behind as he marched into Asia? Do you think rulers mourn the courtiers they exile for treachery? Power does not tolerate weakness by association, and transformation does not tolerate weakness in your circle. The harsh reality is this: people will resent your reinvention. When you change, you expose their unwillingness to do the same. They will mock you, undermine you, pull you back into the cage they themselves refuse to leave. They will call you arrogant, ungrateful, inauthentic. And if you lack ruthlessness, you will fold beneath their pressure. But if you endure, if you cut the ties and embrace solitude, you will discover something terrifying and liberating. You are free. Free to choose new alliances. Free to shape a new environment. Free to become what you once thought impossible. Even your habits must be treated as enemies. Every ritual of weakness must be eliminated. The foods that dull your mind. The distractions that waste your time. The indulgences that weaken your will. Each of them is a thread connecting you to the man you were, and you must cut them one by one until nothing remains. This is why reinvention is ruthless. It is not a makeover. It is an execution. Do you have the courage to stand before the scaffold and declare that your old self must die? Do you have the cruelty to walk away from those who would drag you back into mediocrity? Do you have the resolve to be hated for the sake of transformation? Most men do not. They would rather be loved and weak than hated and powerful. They would rather preserve comfort than endure the isolation of change. But you would not be here if you were like most men. So I ask you, what ties still bind you? Who still whispers the language of weakness in your ear? And will you be ruthless enough to silence them? For reinvention is not the end of the journey. Once you abandon the herd, once you sever the ties, you stand alone, and from that solitude emerges the most dangerous force of all, the ability to shape not only yourself, but reality itself. Control is never seized in the open. It is taken in silence, beneath the surface, while others believe they remain free. Men think they act from choice, but in truth their desires can be guided. Their fears can be inflamed. Their loyalties can be bent. The greatest power is not ruling by force, but shaping perception so subtly that obedience feels like their own decision. Ask yourself, how often have you believed you were in control, when in reality, someone else was pulling the strings? And more importantly, how often could you become the one holding those strings? Remember this: the hand that controls perception controls action. The ruler who masters the unseen currents of human nature masters the world itself. Now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on controlling others without them knowing? Share them in the comments below. Subscribe if you are ready to arm yourself with more ruthless strategies. And share this video so that others may see the truth, whether they are ready for it or not.